What if I told you that Whitney Houston once had her own Secret Service detail and FBI protection unit? What if I told you that during her 1991 Super Bowl performance, she was under the same level of security protection as the President of the United States? And what if I told you that classified government documents reveal terrorist organizations had specifically targeted Whitney Houston as a symbol of American culture worth destroying? The untold story of how Whitney became a government asset starts here, January 15th, 1991, 6:22 a.m. East. FBI headquarters, Washington, D.C. Special Agent Patricia Morrison opens a classified briefing folder marked Operation Desert Shield, Cultural Target Assessment. Inside are photographs, intelligence reports, and a single name that will change how the U.S. government views entertainers forever. Whitney Elizabeth Houston. Within hours, the most powerful voice in America will become one of the most protected people in the country. The Gulf War had begun 5 days earlier, and American intelligence agencies were scrambling to assess domestic vulnerability to terrorist retaliation. Traditional targets, government buildings, military installations, transportation hubs, were already under maximum security. But a new category of target had emerged from intercepted communications, cultural symbols that represented American values and global influence. Whitney Houston topped every list. The intelligence briefing that morning revealed chilling details about potential threats against American celebrities who embodied Western cultural dominance in the Middle East. Whitney's music videos played on MTV across Arab nations. Her songs dominated international radio, and her image represented everything that extremist groups claimed to oppose about American cultural imperialism. But it wasn't just her fame that made Whitney a target. It was her scheduled Super Bowl performance on January 27, 1991. The NFL's championship game would be broadcast to over 100 million viewers worldwide, including military personnel stationed in the Persian Gulf. For terrorist organizations, disrupting America's most watched sporting event would deliver psychological damage far exceeding any conventional attack. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit had identified 3 specific threat vectors against Whitney Houston. First, her Super Bowl performance would occur in Tampa Stadium, a large outdoor venue with multiple security vulnerabilities. Second, her status as a prominent African-American woman made her a symbol of American diversity that extremist propaganda specifically targeted. Third, intelligence intercepts suggested that harming Whitney during the Super Bowl would break American morale more effectively than attacking government facilities. By January 16th, Whitney Houston was assigned a security classification level typically reserved for cabinet members and federal judges. The decision came directly from Attorney General Dick Thornburgh's office, following emergency consultations with FBI Director William Sessions and National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft. For the first time in American history, an entertainer would receive presidential-level protection based solely on terrorist threat intelligence. The security operation, codenamed Golden Voice, involved over 200 federal agents from multiple agencies. Plus, Secret Service provided personal protection specialists trained in executive security protocols. FBI counterterrorism units monitored communication channels for specific threats against Whitney. CIA analysts assessed international intelligence related to planned attacks on American cultural targets during the Super Bowl period. Whitney initially resisted the extraordinary security measures, viewing them as excessive and potentially harmful to her public image. She had built her career on accessibility and warm connection with audiences. Suddenly being surrounded by armed federal agents seemed antithetical to everything she represented as an artist. The classified briefing she received on January 18th changed her perspective completely. FBI Special Agent Morrison personally delivered intelligence reports that Whitney later described as terrifying. The briefing included intercepted communications from multiple terrorist cells discussing specific plans to target the Super Bowl. Whitney's name appeared in several transcripts, along with detailed discussions about the propaganda value of harming America's most beloved female entertainer during the nation's most watched event. One particular intercept, declassified 20 years later, revealed the extent of the threat. The woman who sings for the American military must not be allowed to inspire their soldiers. Silencing her voice would show that their culture cannot protect even their most celebrated citizens. The language wasn't metaphorical. Intelligence agencies had identified at least 3 distinct plots involving Whitney Houston during Super Bowl week. One involved infiltrating Tampa Stadium's security perimeter during her performance. Another focused on attacks against her hotel or transportation routes. The third, most chilling plan involved mail bombs sent to venues where Whitney was scheduled to appear. By January 20th, Whitney Houston was living under security protocols typically reserved for heads of state. Her hotel rooms were swept daily by explosive detection specialists. Her food was tested by agents trained in chemical analysis. Her transportation involved multiple vehicle convoys with advanced security teams clearing routes hours before her movements. The preparation for her Super Bowl performance became the most complex security operation in entertainment history. Tampa Stadium was transformed into a fortress, with FBI counterterrorism units positioned throughout the venue, military snipers on surrounding buildings, and air defense systems monitoring the airspace for potential aircraft-based attacks. Whitney's rehearsals occurred under armed guard, with security sweeps conducted before and after each session. Her costume fittings, vocal warm-ups, and media interviews all took place within secured areas, protected by federal agents trained in close protection protocols. But the most extraordinary security measure involved Whitney's actual performance. As she sang the Star-Spangled Banner on January 27, 1991, invisible laser sights from federal sniper teams tracked potential threats throughout Tampa Stadium. Radio communications between security units created a protective net around Whitney that extended far beyond the stadium itself. The performance's emotional power was enhanced by context that audiences couldn't fully appreciate. Whitney Houston was singing America's national anthem while under active terrorist threat, protected by the same security apparatus that guarded the president during wartime. Her voice carried not just musical excellence, but defiant courage in the face of those who wanted to silence it. The classified after-action report from Operation Golden Voice, partially declassified in 2011, revealed the extent of the threats that were successfully neutralized. FBI counterterrorism units disrupted 2 separate plots targeting Whitney during Super Bowl week. Several individuals were detained for surveillance activities around her hotel. Multiple suspicious packages addressed to Whitney at various venues were intercepted and found to contain explosive materials. Most remarkably, the security operation worked so effectively that Whitney herself wasn't informed about many of the specific threats that were eliminated. She performed the Star-Spangled Banner, unaware that federal agents had prevented at least 3 serious attempts to harm her during the preceding week. The success of Operation Golden Voice established new protocols for protecting high-profile entertainers during national security crises. Whitney Houston became the template for how the federal government assesses and responds to terrorist threats against cultural figures who represent American values internationally. But the psychological cost of living under such protection was significant. Whitney later described the experience as living in a bubble of fear that changed her relationship with public performance. The knowledge that her artistic expression made her a terrorist target created anxiety that affected her for years afterward. The classified files also revealed something extraordinary about Whitney's response to the threat briefings. She insisted on performing despite FBI recommendations that she withdraw from the Super Bowl. When offered the option of lip-syncing to a pre-recorded track for additional security, she refused, declaring that, "If they want to silence my voice, they'll have to hear it first." This decision, made under extraordinary pressure and genuine physical danger, transformed Whitney's Super Bowl performance from entertainment into an act of cultural defiance. She wasn't just singing the national anthem, she was refusing to let terrorism modify American artistic expression. The government's relationship with Whitney Houston continued beyond Super Bowl X50, though most details remain classified. FBI files indicate that she maintained a cultural asset designation for several years, with periodic threat assessments conducted whenever intelligence suggested renewed interest from extremist groups. Declassified documents from the Clinton administration reveal that Whitney was consulted about security protocols for major entertainment events during the 1990s. Her experience as the first entertainer to receive presidential-level protection made her an unofficial advisor on celebrity security during periods of elevated terrorist threat. The most significant long-term consequence of Operation Golden Voice was its influence on how the federal government views American cultural exports as potential terrorist targets. Whitney Houston's case established that entertainers who achieve global prominence automatically become elements of national security consideration during international crises. Today, major entertainment events routinely include security measures that were pioneered during Whitney's Super Bowl protection. The integration of federal agencies, military assets, and local law enforcement that protected her performance became the standard template for securing high-profile cultural events. When Whitney Houston died in 2012, several classified files were reviewed for potential declassification in recognition of her unique role in national security history. The documents revealed that Operation Golden Voice was considered one of the most successful celebrity protection operations ever conducted, serving as a model for protecting cultural figures during periods of international tension. The secret government files paint a picture of Whitney Houston as more than just an entertainer. She was an American cultural ambassador whose voice was considered so powerful and symbolically important that enemies of the United States specifically targeted her for harm. The fact that she continued performing despite these threats makes her artistic courage even more remarkable. January 27, 1991, when Whitney Houston sang "The Star-Spangled Banner" at Super Bowl XGI, she wasn't just delivering one of the greatest vocal performances in American history. She was demonstrating that American culture would not be silenced by terrorism, that artistic expression would continue despite those who sought to destroy it. The classified files reveal that Whitney Houston didn't just sing the national anthem that day. She embodied it, becoming a living symbol of the courage and defiance that the song celebrates. Under federal protection, surrounded by agents trained to protect presidents, she proved that America's greatest voices would not be intimidated into silence. Operation Golden Voice remains one of the most successful entertainment security operations in federal law enforcement history. It protected not just Whitney Houston, but the principle that American cultural expression deserves the same level of protection as American political institutions. The woman who sang that night was more than a pop star. She was a cultural warrior whose voice was deemed so important to American morale that the full power of the federal government was deployed to protect it. That performance wasn't just entertainment. It was an act of national resistance delivered by someone brave enough to sing despite knowing she was a target.